Hello everyone, I'm Rasika D'Souza from Futuresource Consulting. I head up the personal electronics hardware service in the company. I come from a slightly different background to probably most of you creative people here. But what I'm going to do is just spend the next 10 to 15 minutes and tell you a little bit more about high-level trends in music listening with consumers, and also sharing some hardware numbers with you so you understand the extent to which there's deployment of hardware, audio hardware globally. Without much further ado, um, before I dive into audio hardware numbers, I just want to throw some light on the recorded music industry. Um,
So globally, the industry generated revenues worth approximately $21 billion in 2017. And the music industry has grown significantly. In fact, it's doubled over the last 5 years. And at Futuresource, we estimated that the industry was worth about $42.5 billion last year. Um, Now, we've all been talking about this, but consumers are rapidly moving away from packaged music to subscription services. And as you can see, last year, over 80% of the recorded music industry revenues came from subscriptions. Now, during the pandemic, there was obviously, different trends in consumer behavior, and we saw that there was a surge in demand for packaged music. Consumers were homebound. They invested in good quality sound, and we actually saw CD sales start to stabilize. But on the whole, what we believe is that subscription services will likely be the go-to music listening format. Streaming services are continuing to capture share, and they're exploring new revenue streams and bringing more value to consumers. Now, let's just look at where consumers listen to music. Now, the above this chart on the left is taken from Futuresource's consumer survey, Audio Tech Lifestyle. This survey is conducted in the US, UK, Germany, China, and Japan. And what we've seen is that about 60% of music listening and also for podcasts and audiobooks are consumed in the home. And what we've also seen is that for radio, the split is fairly even. I think the color is not coming on the chart for some reason, but basically what we can see is that out of home and in home for radio is a fairly even split. This is largely attributed to the fact that a lot of the radio listening happens in car. So that's one of the reasons why we see a slight difference in radio consumption behavior. Again, just touching upon music listening, we have seen the pandemic has changed consumer behavior to some extent. We are now seeing much more headphones usage in the home as well, and we're seeing that 17% of consumers used headphones for listening to music alone. And we're seeing that this number has actually increased from the previous wave of this research that we had conducted in 2020. Radio, the data is not on this chart, but with radio, what we've seen in the home is that it's traditionally a more family or group listening experience. So, devices like smart speakers or Bluetooth and Wi-Fi speakers are the dominant format or the dominant medium through which you listen to this music. So I just want to now touch upon home audio. As I said, the home is such an important place, for music listening. And there are so many audio hardware options out there for consumers to choose. You've got your traditional devices like AV receivers, hi-fi systems, loudspeakers, PC speakers. But more recently, there's been a huge surge in demand for, more modern devices like Bluetooth speakers or Wi-Fi speakers or soundbars. But in the past couple of years, what we've been seeing is that there has been a greater focus on audio quality, and you'll see me say that quite a lot today through this presentation and also on the panel. But generally, consumers are asking for better quality products, and they are willing to pay more in order to obtain that, better quality devices. They are moving away from, the cheap, off-the-cuff purchases in favor of genuine upgrades and better products. And this is really working well for the audio industry as well. And what we are seeing is that the global install base of home audio hardware alone is over 1.2 billion devices, and that's a global figure. To give you some more background on this, Wi-Fi speakers accounted for a pretty large share of home audio ownership. Um, Approximately 400 million devices out of that 1.2 billion and more is just from Wi-Fi speakers alone. Wi-Fi speakers have started to offer a lot more sophistication in connecting to, music sources, but also just creating that seamless listening experience. In terms of soundbars, what we've seen is that the quality of soundbars have started to get better. They've become more immersive, and they've started or they have become the preferred living room audio solution. I just want to mention one more segment here, and that is party speakers. Now, party speakers actually sit as a subset of the Bluetooth speaker space. And what we are seeing is that this is one of the fastest growing category in home audio. Um, it's important, the reason I mention this is because it highlights a very early trend for social and outdoor music listening and consumption, where you're bringing people together in order to kind of listen to good quality sound on these devices. Now, if you just look at the home audio market and industry in the UK alone, um, we at Futuresource, you know, gathered and estimated that there are about over 50 billion home audio devices out there, and with an approximate population of 30 million households in the UK, on average, we are talking about every household having more than one home audio device. Well, theoretically speaking, but that's quite a substantial penetration of audio hardware in one country alone. Um, there's one more point I wanted to mention. I've not included radio in these numbers, but when you add radio to this mix, then the numbers, are much bigger than what I have said, because radio listening is very, very, um, it's very, very important in certain markets like the UK, but also in emerging markets like India, where traditional and modern home audio hardware devices, actually the penetration is quite low. So there's just a lot happening in the audio space, and consumers are accessing music through multiple sources and multiple mediums. Uh, whilst I'm talking about stepping slightly away from home audio, on-the-go music listening is again a big trend, and it grew during the portable CD, iPod era. But today, it's driven largely by the fact that smartphones are such a primary device for storing music. It's such an important source device. There are approximately 4.2 billion smartphones in use as of the end of last year. And this combination of this massive ownership of smartphones along with growth in streaming services just means that music is so much more accessible to consumers, on the go, at home, in cars, wherever they are. And as we previously saw in one of the slides, headphones are now such an important device, not just for on-the-go listening, but even in home. And with more and more consumers homebound, after the pandemic, lots of consumers are working from home, but they're also kind of exercising at home, listening to music. They're doing everything with headphones. And this has really grown the overall install base of headphones. Overall install base of just audio headphones is 1.2 billion, and that makes it the largest audio category globally in terms of ownership. And I have to mention True Wireless, because I think it's really struck. I think the industry hit the nail on the head with that hardware, because it's just gained so much popularity in the last 5 years. We saw shipments grow from 30 million units in 2018 to 340 million units last year. So it just shows the sheer popularity of this device for music listening. So stepping away from the home and on-the-go music listening, obviously we're talking about in cars, which has been a really big focus in the last few years. CES this year was just exploding with so many announcements around in-car generally. There's lots of focus on, improving music experiences in this confined space. There's just so much innovation that we are seeing around, cars becoming quieter, better technologies in terms of noise cancellation, lots of driving aids, such as adaptive cruise control and, semi-autonomous driving. All of this means that, the driver is left actually in a fairly relaxed environment to actually enjoy a good music experience. And what we saw is that, all of this has meant that, connected cars are growing in popularity. They're growing at about 9% CAGR over the next 5 years. And we saw about 50 million connected cars sold last year, and we're expecting that to grow to about 70 million by 2026. Now, if you just look at listening experiences, sorry, yeah, listening experiences, which is the chart on the right. This is again from our consumer survey. It just shows a clear difference in preference for music listening amongst the Gen Z and millennials as opposed to the slightly older consumers. The younger consumers are preferring to listen to music with their smartphones, either by Bluetooth, being connecting by Bluetooth to their car, or just through a wired connection. But the chart actually shows that about 45% of Gen Z and millennials use their smartphones in order to listen to music. And with newer technologies like Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, again, we're seeing 11% of Gen Z and millennials who are opting for this option. So why is this important? Because these are the young consumers. They're going to define the future of listening trends, and it's fairly clear that they're stepping away from traditional formats of listening to music. So it's just to give you some perspective into how the younger consumers want to listen to music today in cars. I have spoken about a fair few things today, and I just wanted to spend this last 2 minutes to wrap up some of the key highlights from my presentation. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was that the ownership of home audio, it's strong, it's growing, and it's largely driven by Western markets. But it's also a very important space because over 50% of music listening is in the home. With headphones as well, the ownership is very strong. True wireless hearables, they're driving a lot of interest, and it's just growing the install base of the overall audience that want to listen to music. The second point is, of course, the recorded music industry is growing. It is largely driven by subscriptions, but it is growing, and it's going to continue to grow. In-car, as I mentioned, there's lots of innovations in this space, and the younger consumers will determine the future of in-car entertainment as well. And lastly, I wanted to touch upon something else which I've not spoken about in the rest of the presentation, and that is about other audio hardware that will come in the future. And this will be providing more avenues for consumers to listen to music. And when we're talking about the metaverse and things like that, VR, AR, these devices are going to play a big role. And we do see VR glasses and VR headsets and AR glasses will have lots of use cases around music listening as well. In terms of hearing aids, we see hearing aids also, where there's a desire now. Consumers who have been used to listening with these personal devices, they want even hearing aids to be able to connect to music. And, consumer companies in the OTC space, we expect they are leading the way, but we will see much more innovations even in the hearing aid space. So with that, that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you found it insightful. I will be around for the rest of the afternoon, so if you have any questions around the data or trends, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much.